to Next on Nautilus, one of 3 live event series taking place during the 2020 expedition season, where you can learn more about each expedition as we move through our 4-month season, which is happening now through early December. A reminder that you can tune into the expedition anytime at nautiluslive.org. We've been diving for the last several weeks, and we are currently exploring Quinault Canyon, which we'll be learning more about during this session. But first, my name is Madison Dapsovich, and I am a member of the Corps of Exploration. We are so glad to have you joining us via Facebook and YouTube. Throughout this event, remember that you can ask questions of our explorers by adding comments and questions through the platform that you're watching from. We'd love to know where in the world you're joining us from, so please take a moment to share where you are. And now we're gearing up for almost 2 weeks of exploration in 2 submarine canyons located off the coast of Washington State, one of which has never been dove in before. And here we'll be utilizing the capabilities of ROV Hercules to explore and investigate and sample biological communities in and around the deep canyon features of this area. This includes deep sea coral, sponge, and fish communities, as well as biological communities associated with more than 2,000 methane seeps that have been discovered here in the last decade. It's pretty fascinating. And like many of you watching from home, the Nautilus Live team is also adapting to life during COVID-19, which means we will be introducing you to our very special guests from our crew while streaming from our own homes. Here with us to talk more about our upcoming cruise season, our research coordinator with NOAA's Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary, Jenny Waddell, onshore scientist and education and outreach specialist with the sanctuary, Nicole Harris, and Joe Schumacher, who is a marine resources scientist with the Quinault Indian Nation Department of Fisheries. Jenny, thank you so much for joining us. We'll just start right off the bat. What are you doing, and what does your work evolve here in the sanctuary?
Thanks, Maddie. We're really excited to be working with Nautilus again here in the deep canyons. We're going to be diving in Quinault Canyon and Grays Canyon and surrounding areas. We're working in Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary as well, looking at methane seeps and a meteorite dive, as a matter of fact. And with that, I'd love to introduce Nicole Harris, who is a colleague of mine at the sanctuary.
Thanks, Jenny. Hey everyone, I'm Nicole Harris, and I'm the Education and Outreach Specialist with NOAA's Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary. I get to work with Jenny, and I think I have one of the best jobs because I get to take this amazing marine science, all the stuff that we already know and the stuff that we're still learning, and share it with K through 12 students and larger audiences. And Joe, let's kick it over to you now.
Hello all, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm Joe Schumacher. I'm the Marine Resources Scientist with the Quinault Indian Nation out here on the Olympic Peninsula. Been working for this tribe, had the pleasure of working for them for 22 years now, so become very familiar with this coast, and yet there's still so much we need to learn out here. And something is a platform as able as the Nautilus coming out here and investigating for us just helps us out so much. So we're looking forward to the future of this mission and what's been done to date. And for that, I'll kick it back to our host.
Awesome. Yeah, we have so many amazing things that we're gearing up to explore, and I can't wait to learn more about these endeavors with you guys. We know that the sanctuary mostly encompasses continental shelf habitats. Those are primarily found in water depths that are less than about 200 meters, but there are several deeper submarine canyons that extend to depths of over 1,500 meters. That's about 5,000 feet. And then the deepest of that is Quinault Canyon. We're visiting other areas, Jenny, as you mentioned, Grays Canyon in the south. Tell us about these steep, hard bottom habitats and what makes life unique here.
Well, we're super excited to be exploring some of these places that very little is known about them, haven't been visited before with this type of technology, and all of the suite of environmental sensors that we're able to bring to talk about what may be structuring these deep sea environments. Lots of really fascinating creatures here, corals and sponges, some of which have yet to be described and may in fact be new to science. So in particular, we're looking for concentrations of animals generally found on hard bottom habitats, including aggregations where we actually can collect imagery to make a photo mosaic so that we can monitor how these environments are doing over time, at least in a few places.
That is so exciting. And do we have a few target species that we're really looking towards finding and identifying? You know, how do you set sort of priorities to which species you're really looking for?
Well, fortunately, we work with a very collaborative group of scientists along the West Coast, and we have all been working very closely together to develop a list of the species that we would like to sample. So this includes coral and sponges, as well as invertebrates. And we have very specific collection targets based on the previous work that we've done here, as well as some species that we think we might find. You see some images here taken from previous Nautilus missions that give you a glimpse of some of the species that we are looking to find and potentially sample. Again, some of these are new to science and are currently being described. So it's really very exciting that every time we go down and look at these places, we're finding things that we don't really know what it is yet. So it's amazing and exciting. As a scientist, it's rare that we get to do this sort of thing.
Absolutely. And it's so much fun for our viewers from home as well. I mean, I'm watching from home to help identify and find those species as well. So please tune in and help our scientists both on ship and on shore identify them, and be sure to send us your questions as it's happening. We do have one viewer question, and they want to know, how often do you pick up these samples?
Well, we do try to keep the collecting within the sanctuary limited because we want to make sure and preserve those habitats. When we're outside the sanctuary, we're a little bit more free to collect, but we also are very careful not to over-collect, not to collect too many of each thing, and to not take the first or only specimen that we see. We want to make sure that those especially rare organisms continue to flourish. So we're very careful, and we are very efficient in our collection so that many scientists can share the same samples.
Absolutely. And that is something that is really unique and exciting with Nautilus, as well as those samples become available to scientists around the world to explore and identify and do future research with. So it's a great reminder that the science really extends beyond the ship. One thing that I'm really interested in learning more about is something that we know very little, and those are areas that have been designated as essential fish habitats in Quinault Canyon. And what exactly is an essential fish habitat, and what are we trying to learn from this?
That's a great question. So essential fish habitat are areas of the seafloor that have been set aside by the Pacific Fishery Management Council. Fisheries management is largely run in federal waters by these regional fishery management councils. And they have set up specific spatial management areas called essential fish habitat that are really important for thriving fish communities. I would love to bring Joe into the conversation because the Quinault Indian Nation is one of 4 coastal treaty tribes that have special reserve treaty rights to fishery and other marine resources in these areas. So Joe and his comrades at the Coastal Treaty Tribe work very closely with Pacific Fisheries Management Council to guide fisheries management in our region. Joe, could you explain a little bit more about Quinault Indian Nation role in fishery management and why this is of interest to your community?
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. Yeah, this is a unique area within the world, and certainly within the United States, it's very unique. This is the only place within the United States, with the exception of the Great Lakes, where tribes have rights to the resources in the waters around them. This area, that means that the treaty tribes of the Olympic Peninsula, 4 of these tribes, from Quinault Indian Nation in the south to the Hoh tribe to the Quileute tribe to the Makah tribe in the north, all of these tribes have rights in the ocean, and that's unique. And when, many indigenous peoples may, have historic rights of some sort, but these are codified with treaties with the United States government. So that makes the tribes here co-managers of these resources in the areas. It's extremely unique in that regard. So we participate fully within all of the management regimes, including the Pacific Fisheries Management Council that you referred to, Jenny. part of that process involves the various groupings of fish that the council manages, including groundfish. And under the Magnuson-Stevens Fisheries Conservation Act, which you can abbreviate easier, it's that you must identify areas of essential fish habitat that protect and can support these species groups. So groundfish essential fish habitat became very important as groundfish species on the West Coast began to suffer from decreases in population, from whatever the cause may have been, fishing in most cases. So with that, these designations came about. And so this area here in the Quinault Canyon that we're looking at today, for instance, and some others you're going to be looking at, biogenic 2, those are areas for supporting these stocks of fish. And not just to non-tribal folks out there, but to the tribes on the coast as well. Thanks.
Absolutely. And when we're looking at these essential fish habitat areas, I'm wondering what sort of things is Nautilus looking for specifically? Is it just to get a better idea of maybe what this habitat looks like? Is it to maybe take stock of different species that call this area home? You know, what exactly are you looking for?
So I'm not sure if you're asking that question to me.
Yeah, take it away.
Okay. Well, for us, you know, it's very intriguing because a lot of these essential fish habitats were done kind of in a vacuum. In other words, they were done with limited information, and they looked at the bathymetry of the area to try to determine if there was good hard substrate that biogenic habitat could grow on. That would be corals, sponges, things of that nature, and potentially boulders as well, and other geologic formations that these fish, as you're seeing on your screen right now, like to congregate around and act as habitat for them. So, you know, you can do this from the surface only so far. It's better to get down there on the bottom and really try to identify what these areas actually are comprised of.
Absolutely. And, you know, as we mentioned earlier, Quinault and Gray's Canyon are two areas that we're looking at. We have a viewer question who wants to know a little bit more maybe about the geological aspect of this area. Is it located on the North American plate? And, you know, how far away or near is it to the trenches? Anyone?
Yeah, this is a really geologically complex area. There are many plates that come together as part of the Cascadia subduction zone. There's going to be a cruise next summer to explore that a lot more. But I do believe that we are on the North American plate. It's really hard to say right here. There are many different fractures and fault lines, and where we're diving now is just it's off the shelf and west of where I think the plate boundary is, but the Cascadia subduction zone is a bit further offshore. It's what is, so the Pacific plate and the Juan de Fuca plate are subducting under the North American plate. It's more complicated than that, but generally that's what's happening. And that's why all of Cascadia is a little bit on pins and needles, because that subduction zone is what generates some big earthquakes that have the potential to cause tsunamis. So, you know, here's some deep sea habitat video showing some, looks like probably methane coming up, bubbling up from the seafloor. It's a very tectonically active zone, which also helps to structure some of the biology. In fact, this dive that we're doing right now is taking an interesting line around this escarpment that makes a hard dog leg, and we're not quite sure why, but we think it's related to the movement of the plates.
That is so fascinating. And we did have a great conversation last week with Thurber Lab and Carrie McPhail about methane seeps and the microbes that live there. So I encourage anyone who's curious about learning a little bit more in depth about those features, head on over to nautiluslive.org/education. Speaking of education, Nicole and Joe, you guys do a lot of work sort of reaching out to the community and accessing, you know, different stories and perspectives and making sure that all those voices are heard. I'm really curious to know a little bit more, Nicole, about your role as an education outreach specialist and what it is that you do.
Thanks, Madison. So, you know, you've heard it from Joe and Jenny, and we've seen it. There's so much we don't know about the largest habitat on our planet. And as we've been able to enjoy technology and the way technology is moving, it gives us an opportunity to really understand. And so that's where it becomes this critical opportunity to engage students. We want to build a workforce of this next generation that's comfortable in marine technology and comfortable in the processes of our environments. And this is what I love about especially the MATE program, the Marine Advanced Technology and Education. This is really engaging students in STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math, and art, because they get to create these amazing vehicles, which are really mini ROVs, and they're conducting real world scenarios as a product demonstration inside a pool. And these students have to learn how to have teamwork, how to build on each other's skills, how to give and take. They also have to learn how to communicate their science and what they're doing to judges. And they also get the opportunity to interact with professionals that are in this world right now. So they create these posters like you can see here, where they really tell the story of their team and how the decisions they made to build this vehicle and how it's going to help solve these problems, phenomena that they've been tasked with to solve. And then they get to work with these professionals who kind of interview them and can also give them some tips and really break down those walls of feeling, it's inspiring instead of making them shrink away from these people. They get to interact with them on one-to-one and really feel confident in this environmental world.
Right. And it is so crazy to me that, it is the largest habitat on our planet, and we are still learning so much about it. And what an amazing opportunity to invite the youth to kind of participate in this. And wow, I mean, it's inspiring. Joe, how does this expedition and maybe other efforts inspire Quinault Indian Nation youth and to explore and protect the ocean resources, especially because it is something that's so close to home?
There we go. Still, I was muted a little bit. Nicole and her crew have been wonderful. You noted in those photos of the ROVs. These are put together with PVC pipe and 3 motors and with props on them, and then a nice little box. And so they're able to bring all of the control box. They're able to bring all of this down to schools and bring this to the students and show them this type of technology and get their brains thinking in that direction with these very simple. And what we're really lacking out here on the coast in so many ways are these type of educational opportunities to really get students excited about the ocean, the environment in general, because we're in a very rural area and it's difficult to get good teachers to stay out here. It really is. We're not anywhere near Seattle, folks. We're here on the outer coast of Washington State, and it's really something that's needed badly. And so we really thank the sanctuary system and of course the Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary staff for coming down here and doing this type of outreach for our students. As you can see on the photo there, we get them out in the tide pools as well. And these types of things get everybody's brains thinking more about the environment around them and what they can potentially do to interact better with it, understand it better, and of course, maybe do better to preserve it for future generations, which is the most important thing for tribes.
Absolutely. And Joe, we chatted a little bit yesterday about your favorite fried food. What does razor clam digging, how you spoke a lot about how that's a really unique thing and it's very culturally significant. And we just saw the tide pooling photo. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So the razor clams are important to all of the tribes on the outer coast out here, but in particular the Quinault Indian Nation. As I noted earlier, the Quinault Reservation is on the southern end of the 4 tribes that I described, and that happens to be a geologic breakpoint where these wide sandy beaches exist, and that's where the razor clam hangs out. And what you're seeing here in this video are tribal members from the Quinault Nation commercially harvesting razor clams out there in the sand. And you dig these with a long bladed shovel that goes into the sand behind the clam, and your hand goes in behind it and it brings the clam out if you're a good digger. And put those into a bag, and if you get a lot of them, you can actually make a pretty darn good supplemental income commercially harvesting these clams. It's not only, and there's a nice size one, by the way. I'm holding that for that's a really nice razor clam. We're not only are these important for the tribal community out here, but also for the non-tribal Washington State sport community. It's huge economic. It's a huge economic boon to the outer coast when the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife opens up razor clam digs. And I don't know, if you got a minute, you want to see what a clam looks like?
I would love to. I'm sure our viewers as well.
I just happen to have my National Marine Sanctuary
Yes.
program lunch bag. So let's see what we got in here. Oh, there we go. So these are some clams that I dug recently out on the beach right across the street from my little place here. And when you clean them out, you saw them in the shell in the video, but when you clean them out, you end up with something like this. This is not a fried clam. That's a clam body. And these are what people come from hundreds of miles away to go and harvest out here. So this has been cleaned out. The gills and the gut tissue in the middle are removed. And there's a little digger foot that goes at the bottom that the clam digs with. So these are active digging clams, which is also really neat. Most people that dig clams in the world scrape them out of the gravel somewhere or in the mud and they just stay there. No. These clams can use this little foot that I've filleted open here like this. And it goes down in the sand and digs and chases down into the sand. They can dig about 1 meter deep in seconds. And so they actually have a fair chance of getting away from you. It's really a fun little harvest, if you will. And when you fry them up, you end up with these right here. Let's see. Oh, yeah, here we go. That's a fried razor clam. Got a little breading coming off of it here right now. But that's I was taught how to fry these properly by the members of the Quinault Nation, and they told me exactly how to bread them and fry them up the right way, and they're awful good and tasty.
I don't know about you all, but it's right around lunchtime here for me, and my mouth just watered looking at that.
It's a funny looking clam, I gotta admit.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, and what a cool story and connection with the land. It's really, really inspiring to see. And it looks like we also have a lot of folks from the NOAA Sanctuary joining in and tuning in with us. And I just wanted to give them a shout out and say hello. And please do send us your questions. It's really what drives this conversation here, including all of you. So thank you for watching. I do have a question to each of you, and this is a kind of a funky one, but I know that we've been in the sanctuary before, and I'm curious, what are your favorite critters that we've seen there? Nicole, maybe I'll start with you. Can you, not to put you on the spot, but what is sort of one of the most memorable or interesting animals that you've seen while diving in the area?
Well, I have been fortunate enough to be on 2 watches since we launched the ROV at midnight. And I have to say, I saw some of the most beautiful Paragorgia bubblegum coral. It was, to quote our watch lead, the floofiest bubblegum coral you could possibly see. Every polyp was out and loud and proud. It was really stunning. And then just being able to see all of the habitat that those corals build. And because I'm a big fan of nudibranchs, and the intertidal is one of my most favorite places, and I can find those guys there. But we were able to see some Tritonia nudibranchs last night too, which was an extra treat for me.
Absolutely. Jenny, have you seen anything cool or exciting so far?
Yeah, I was just having a hard time choosing favorites, but I'm really super excited about the sponges right now. We are finding sponges that look different, that are really pretty exciting. And every time I get on the chat or hear what Meredith's talking about or what Abby's talking about, some of these glass sponges are just so unique and they look like Dr. Seuss creatures. So please stay tuned for some of those. We're going to be trying to visit a glass sponge aggregation in Gray's Canyon a little bit later. And this is a photo from a Nautilus expedition to that area, NAO 72. So really excited to see some more of those cool sponges. Joe, what about you?
Well, I'm a fish biologist by trade, so I got to stick to fish. and we've seen a couple of the really important species in the work that's been done so far in this mission, the Pacific halibut out here on this coast and sablefish. And both of those species are extremely important to the tribes out here as an economic boon for them and as a cultural and subsistence resource for them as well. So we really like to see those out there. We're very interested in what habitats they frequent and what habitats are most important for those species.
Yeah, and did you see those Dungeness crab waiting on the meteorite dive? They kept hanging out around there. We were disturbing enough sediment that all the Dungeness crabs were clustering around. It was pretty fun to see.
I did. I thought they were interested in NASA stuff, but no, I'm sure it was.
You just mentioned like 3 of my favorite foods in one sentence. I grew up in Alaska, so I'm like, Dungeness crab, halibut, I'm in for it.
We're all hungry, you can tell.
I know. And that is a great segue. We also recently wrapped up an 8-hour dive at the Meteorite debris field, which is located in the sanctuary. For a little bit of background, for those of you who are maybe just joining this conversation, Nautilus first recovered meteorite fragments in 2018 after a bolide, which is a very bright meteorite, was spotted off the Pacific Northwest coast. And it seems that we may have potentially found some exciting new features or endeavors about this. Jenny, do you want to dive into that a little bit more?
Sure. This was a little bit off the charts. A couple of years ago, I was contacted by NASA's Cosmic Dust Curator because he had been monitoring NOAA's NEXRAD weather radar data and had identified a really unusual event of a meteorite splashing down into Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary. It's about 14 miles west of the village of Tahola, which is on the Quinault Indian Nation. And we teamed up and talked with Nautilus about this very unusual event and managed to get a day of dive time back in July of 2018 to make our first attempt on that meteorite. We had a huge debris field from this massive bolide and were able to spend some time trying to figure out how we were going to recover meteorite fragments from the seafloor because it hadn't been done before. So this trip, we were able to make one final pass at that meteorite site and use some new types of tools to try and recover the fragments. What you see now are some rare earth magnets that we mounted to a wand. Turns out the seafloor here has a lot of metallic hematite, and so the magnets tended to get clogged up pretty quickly. So we have devised a few additional tools and had hands off to the ROV pilots and engineering team that they have been able to come up with an exhaust system that flows through with a magnet system to try and capture some meteorite fragments. We also have a switchable magnet that you can turn on and off to actuate, which I didn't even really know that was a thing. But it's just been so fascinating and so much fun to work with NASA on this effort that is well off of the normal things that we do here in sanctuaries.
Right. It's such a unique opportunity, and we are so excited to dive into that a little bit more later this week. On Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific time, you all can join us with the Explore at Home Meteorite event, which we'll be discussing these processes in much greater detail, and I just can't wait. What an awesome opportunity. Joe, do you have something to say?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, just real quick, that meteorite was really something. It's technically a bolide if you want to look that up in your dictionary. But basically, when this thing came across the skies out here, it got people's attention. Bright light in the sky and a big booming explosion. I didn't see the flash because I turned my back to the north. I was barbecuing on my porch out here, but my whole house shook like somebody was driving 30 trucks right beside my house there. The windows began to shake, and I didn't have any idea what it was at the time until the next day. And a lot of folks' security cameras on their homes photographed the flash as well out here, or videoed it.
Wow, what a cool experience to see. We have another viewer question that I would love to turn to. You all have touched on these education resources and opportunities that are so special for students that are interested. Emma wants to know what recommendations you might have for a high school student who wants to study or pursue a career in marine biology.
Well, maybe I'll start and just say that first, I think it's great to know what you're interested in. That's a huge step right there. And so I would say, study the sciences. Unfortunately, math is very important. So you don't want to skip the math while you're doing this. And then outside of studying, I would recommend taking opportunities, volunteering where you can. Just going out and exploring and asking questions that just to get familiar with those environments that you are interested in. And NOAA and Nautilus, I think, are great examples of opportunities for students to kind of get their hands into this real world science and mix with these professionals to create this professional learning community.
Absolutely. And Nicole, you also mentioned earlier the MATE program. We had a question from a viewer as well. How long does it take students to complete it?
So the MATE program, it's this really great program. It kind of scaffolds on itself. So students can join early in late elementary or early junior high as Scout. Every year we complete a cycle. So students will build a vehicle, compete at the competition. And then there's Scout and Navigator. They start by driving their vehicle from the pool edge, and then at Navigator, they turn their back to the pool and start driving using a camera to kind of emulate what a little bit more of that real world. And then you can get up into upper high school and even college, where you go into Ranger and Explorer categories, where you're potentially moving on to international competitions every year. So you can spend years in the MATE program as you scaffold up through all of the potential opportunities.
Sounds like an awesome program. And just as a reminder for all of you joining us at home, you can also explore our suite of education resources from your computer. Just head to nautiluslive.org/education. Joe, what are some of the programs and initiatives that you're involved in, and how are you getting people excited about the deep sea and the science that it involves?
So my computer just froze at the beginning of that question. Can you rephrase it?
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of the big projects that you're working on to get people excited about exploring the deep ocean, specifically, students?
Students in particular. We've collaborated with the local school in Tohola that Jenny referred to earlier. That's just north of me here. It's where the seat of government is for the Quinault Indian Nation and where the school's located. It's a K through 12 school, so we have all the grade levels right there. And we've gotten students from 6th grade on up involved with studying hypoxia in particular out here, and helping me with doing some research on this coast, doing some sensor readings for us in the surf zones and in the river mouths right there at Tohola, and trying to get them to understand more about this issue of low oxygen that seems to occur right now seasonally just about every summer. We're now getting these low oxygen events here that really we hadn't seen prior to 2006 that anybody can remember, because these are manifesting in dead fish washing up on the beaches. That's how bad these events occur. So we've gotten the students involved in it. We want them to understand more about what causes this to occur. We believe it's something that's occurred in the past as well, but it's just new to Quinault in this regard and hitting right on these shores. So we want them to get involved with that. We also launch a sea glider from our fishing vessel, and we've had these sea gliders out running off of our coast out here again to map the water column better and let us understand more about what's going on with that. And we ask our students to take a look at that data and help us interpret it.
Absolutely. And we have a question from Josh as well, who wants to know, how vulnerable is this location to climate change? And, you're saying that some of these processes are relatively new or never been seen before. What can people do to maybe keep the ecosystem safe?
So cut your carbon. I mean, honestly, we're dealing with the big ocean here, folks. It's the world. The world as a whole has to cut back on its carbon, and the amount of carbon in the atmosphere is just growing exponentially, and so is the heat. And with that, the ocean's warming up, and that warming ocean is causing ramifications throughout, not just here on our coast, but everywhere. So in reality, that's it. We're kind of at the mercy of the world in this regard, and that's a really fearful thing for the tribes out here on the coast. It not only affects the temperature of the water, but it also leads to carbon getting into the water chemistry, which can lead to low pH and ocean acidification issues.
Absolutely. And just to kind of touch on the animals that call this system home, we've been here before, we've seen it. We have great footage. Jenny, can you tell us a little bit about one of my all-time favorite is the cockatoo squid video that we caught. Can you tell us about this animal and maybe what makes it unique?
Oh, yeah. I remember back in 2017 when this cockatoo squid just came and posed for us in front of the camera, in front of the vehicle for maybe a minute and a half. It's just this really interesting animal that is mostly clear. It has a cigar-shaped digestive organ in the middle that some of them actually have a light on the bottom of it so that when a predator is looking at it from below, it can't see anything to eat it. But I think you can see it here. It's got this wonderful headdress of tentacles that it can move around. It's why I think it's called the cockatoo squid. But you can also see the little dots on its body. It can change its shape and flash its chromatophores. And it was just such a special opportunity to see this interesting squid species.
That's awesome. We also have a couple of other amazing videos that we've captured over the years. What about the siphonophores? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, this is a really neat animal that we found. It actually is a colony, and each of the individuals, it combines to create this feather boa looking organism. It looks like a purple feather boa, and each of the individuals will differentiate itself to have the specific function that it needs to have. But we came across this on a dive and spent quite a bit of time oohing and eyeing because it was just so beautiful and so unusual.
It's absolutely beautiful. And it's always surprising just to see what kind of organisms call the deep ocean home. And it can be a relatively seemingly inhospitable part of the world, but here we see just constant life, and it's always a surprise. And Joe, we also have some really cool footage. Maybe this is a question for you of viperfish. Can you tell us a little bit about what in the world that is?
Well, I think others have seen it. I can tell you, I didn't see the footage, so I can only tell you what I know to be a deep sea fish, an elongate body with a mouthful of teeth that go like that. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Awesome. I'm not a fisheries biologist, so I will not correct you. But it looks like we do have some footage of a viperfish here. So is that sort of what you're talking about, that longer teeth area? Yeah,
just they usually have a mouth full of just really needle-like teeth that kind of mesh together there, and they live in dark environments. So when they grab a hold of something, they got to hold on to it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And it's always fascinating to me, too, just to sort of talk about the different adaptations that animals in the deep ocean have. I mean, what are some of the most common features that we see, like bigger eyes? Obviously, a cockatoo squid is translucent. So what makes an organism successful in an area like the Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary?
Well, it really does depend on the habitat that you're in. These deep sea ecosystems are so distinct from the ecosystems we see on the shelf and near shore. It really, the diversity and the assemblage and the composition of the ecosystem can be really, really different. this is a beautiful image that we're seeing. It looks like there's a lot of microbial mat there.
Absolutely. And what exactly is a microbial mat? It's a bunch of different bacteria in one location, is sort of my understanding.
Yes. And I'm excited for you to all talk with Andrew and Dr. Carrie McPhail and Dr. Andrew Thurber, who are our co-collaborators on this mission, because they study microbial mats and they can tell you all about it. Whereas I could really just skim the surface if I was trying to talk about it.
Absolutely. We had a fascinating conversation with the Thurber Lab and Carrie McPhail last week. And if you're curious to learn more about microbial mats, head on over to nautiluslive.org and you can view that whole conversation. It was absolutely fascinating. I just got a ping from our team. It sounds like there's a rockfish on the live stream at the moment. I don't know if we want to tune it over there and kind of explore the dive in real time, because I don't know about you all, but I desperately miss SPL, the science party line.
Yeah, we're pretty deep for most rockfish. The long spine and short spine thorny head tend to be in deep habitats like this. But generally, we don't see rockfish at depths of less than about 600 meters. So I'm eager to know. I'm a little bit distracted looking at the live stream to see what they're seeing down here.
Yeah, it would seem a bit deep for that as well. I just wanted to remark on, you were asking about the adaptations that deep sea animals have out here. One of the real interesting things for me is their sensory apparatus, their ability to sniff out food from long distances. And this is common for all of them because, food down here can be scarce sometimes and hard to come upon, or bonanzas can suddenly pop up like a whale dying and falling to the bottom, those kind of things. And animals will come from far and wide, lured in by those organic scents. And it can be numerous, all kinds of species have these different adaptations to find these food sources in the dark. I think it's really fascinating. The other thing I was going to mention is a lot of this flocculent mud that you see in our live streams, and a lot that you're going to be seeing a lot of if you watch this, is a factor of the productivity of our coast out here, and Jenny can really expect.
Yeah, and Jenny, you were talking a little bit about that too, just how, we can be seeing so much mud and just sedimentation, and then out of nowhere there will be, maybe a coral garden or a field of sponges, and can you talk a little bit just about how those abrupt changes occur? I mean, why are we looking at mud here, and then maybe, at some point in time we'll just see this dramatic feature of coral or sponges?
Yeah, that's been one of the really interesting things about exploring in these lesser studied habitats. Is we're kind of trying to figure out what's structuring the ecosystem, because you're right, it's very patchy. And you can go along for quite some time without many features to explore and visit. And then you'll come across a boulder or even just a ledge that's big enough that organisms can attach to. And then once you start to have organisms growing, it tends to be a positive feedback loop that you'll get. Okay, so you have a coral growing, and then you'll see that there's a sponge or an anemone growing near its base. And then there are lots of things starting to hang off it, whether it is cat shark or skate packages, or egg cases, or whether it's brittle stars or other sea stars. It's just so amazingly diverse. And then you'll get 20 meters away and it'll be back to sand and mud. So really, we're thinking the things that may be helping to structure the environment are obviously depth, but also the aspect or orientation of the cliff, and then the current flow, because many of these organisms are filter feeders. And so having a steady supply of food delivered through currents is really important to their long-term well-being.
Absolutely. And with such a dramatically different seascape from place to place, how is it that Nautilus determines where to dive? How do we go about, our scientists figuring out what might be an area of interest, and then what is sort of the process behind starting that whole dive?
Well, this comes back to the importance of having good maps and good information. We're really fortunate because Nautilus has the capacity to gather information about the depth, the bathymetry, the side scan information that gives us an idea of roughness or what is on the seafloor. And then they also have the ability to look a little bit into the sediment using a sub-bottom profiler. The seafloor mapping information is incredibly important to us, and we use that actively to help plan our dives. It's really hard to know where to go sometimes, and often you're looking for those places that have high slope, because those tend to be the places where you find ledges and hard bottom that's not covered by lots of mud, the mucklicious mud that we have here.
It's great alliteration. And then we have, we're kind of coming up on the end of our 45 minutes. It always astounds me how quickly these go by, because I still have dozens of questions left to ask you, all of you. It's absolutely fascinating to learn about your research and this upcoming cruise and what we can expect. We have one question from a viewer. We talked about, how high school or younger kids can get involved with the science, but for somebody who might be coming out of college, what is the best way for them to get into the science field?
Persistence, determination, and stick-with-itness. Those are definitely things that you need to have to make it in this sort of career. There are many, many opportunities. I encourage you to look at NOAA's website in addition to the educational and internship opportunities offered by OET. There are a lot of ways you can get involved, even people who are artists. There are often artists who are invited to join expeditions and help to interpret and create products for public distribution. NOAA has just an entire web page full of maybe 24 different opportunities that include everything from hauling scholarships for undergraduates to graduate level programs. There are pathways, career programs as well. So there are many, many opportunities. Also, don't be shy. If you are interested in a particular sanctuary or particular area, please reach out to us. We're very busy people, but I am very tuned in to students and always try and get back and answer those questions and set up phone calls so that people can have opportunities. You know, a lot of people helped me in my career, and I'm always looking to help people in, as they're coming up through the ranks as well. I know that Joe and Nicole are both also very tuned in to students and creating opportunities for youth and for recent graduates as well. There aren't that many jobs out there, but, stick with it and you'll find yourself an opportunity. Joe.
Well, I just wanted to put in my plug for working for tribes, the feds, the state agencies, all of those good folks out there. But tribes have active departments of natural resources and work in the marine sciences in this area, and other tribes do as well. So don't forget tribes and your other agencies.
Places you can really make a difference.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There are so many opportunities. And like you all said, you're very busy, and we so appreciate you taking the time today to share a little bit more about your mission and your expedition goals. I know we're all anxiously awaiting to get back to the live stream. So everybody at home, just remember that if you like today's event, you can tell all your friends to join in with you next time, and check out upcoming events on the education page at nautiluslive.org. Of course, we have the live stream going right now. So that's where I'm headed after this. I don't know about you all. And as we mentioned, we also have the Explore at Home event on Thursday, September 24th. That's at 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern, where we're going to talk a little bit more about the meteorite that we dove on earlier this week. Jenny, thank you for introducing us to that as well. And for everyone at home, thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure to answer your questions and to see viewers from all around the world. And we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.